Good morning, I'm Jane, I'm Philomena's daughter. We've obviously never done anything like this before. We've had lots of firsts in the last year or so, and this is another one. So we haven't prepared a paper as such, we're just going to talk. Mum's going to tell you her story in her own words from the beginning, really. Yes. So I'll let you start when you were 6.
Yeah. Hello everybody. The story starts when I was 6 years of age, when my mother died. There were 6 of us in our family. I come from Newcastle, West County, Limerick. 3 boys and 3 girls. When my mother died, and we were a fairly poor family, so Dad put us 3 girls, my 2 sisters and myself, into a convent school in Limerick City, run by nuns. I was 6, as I say, didn't know where I was going, what was happening to us or anything. So there I stayed from 6 years of age until I was 18. And you had to leave that school then at 18. We got a good education, good solid grounding. I used to be very good at Irish. I can't remember a word of it now. But anyway, life went on. So my aunt, because I had nobody, my father disowned me at the time.
Before that.
Yeah.
When you left school at 18?
I left school at 18, and I had to leave there, and I had nowhere to go because I couldn't go home. So an auntie of mine lived in Limerick. My mother's sister, she lived in Limerick. So she had to take me to live with her in Limerick. And so anyway, excuse me, I went to live with her for a while. So I left the convent school sort of quite ignorant, very, very ignorant of the facts of life, didn't know anything about the facts of life. But anyway, I was out of the convent for about 2 months, I think, and there was a big carnival going on in Ireland, in Limerick City. So my auntie and her friend took me to the carnival. Imagine what that was like. I'd never seen anything in my whole life, what it was like. The music, everything was so lovely. So she decided to go off with her friend, and she left me to my own devices. Of course, I was just looking around and watching them, listening to the music, and thought I was in heaven. Anyway, the next thing, Anthony's father came up to me, and so we had a night of love, and I didn't know what I'd been doing. I didn't know the first thing about the facts of life or what had happened. So anyway, we had arranged to meet the following week on the Friday. So he went his way, and my aunt came, collected me and took me home. So I never thought any more about what had happened to me. I didn't know what had happened to me, to be quite honest. And it's very hard to believe that today, you know. So anyway, I went home, and the following week I'd arranged to meet, his name was John McCaughren. I'd arranged to meet John, and I told my aunt, well, I said, I'm going out because I'm going to meet this John. Well, she went ape. She went cross. She said, how dare you? How dare you? This was it. But of course, being brought up and doing everything you were always told to do, you wouldn't dare, I wouldn't disobey her. So I said, well, I must go because I've promised to meet him. He'll be waiting there for me. She said, you're not going out of this house. And she gave me quite a haymaker across the face, and she locked me in. So I never got ever met Anthony's father. So anyway, the months went on. This was the October, December. He went on to me. She said to me one day, are you pregnant? Now you'll all believe, hard to believe this as well. But I didn't know what pregnant was, you know, because I'd never discussed the facts of life, didn't. So I said, what's pregnant? And she said, have you been with the boy? I said, yes, the night that we went to the carnival, and then I said, you wouldn't let me see him anymore. Oh my God, she said. So she went crazy. She got me to see the doctor. And my brother, was one brother that knew I've been friends with him all my life, and he came with me and my aunt to the doctor and discovered I was pregnant. This was in the May, and I had Anthony in the July. And of course they got me into a home in Roscrea. The doctor knew of this home in Roscrea, mother and baby home. So in I went, and as I say, 2 months later Anthony was born. And it was quite a traumatic birth because it was a breech birth. And I heard one of the nuns that was delivering the baby, she said, I have never done a breech birth in my life. And she ran out to the other girls that were nursing their babies. You know, we used to stay in one part of the home while you were nursing your baby for 8 weeks. So she ran out and said to them all, she thought I was going to die. She told them all, go down your knees. They had to leave their supper on the table and kneel down because I was going to die. But anyway, thank goodness I didn't. But anyway, somebody was up there was looking out to me. And anyway, I had Anthony, and you stayed in the nursing area of the home for 8 weeks, and you nursed your baby. And then you had to go over to the main part of the home, which was where all the other girls had babies, and you were given a job. Each girl, I mean, there was the kitchen, the garden, all different sorts of places. But I managed to get the laundry. So I worked in the laundry for 3.5 years, and we just got on with it. We couldn't do anything else really. And then we were about an hour every evening at about 4 o'clock. We were allowed up to see our babies, you know, and look after our babies and nurse our babies, have a little time with them, you know. So that went on and on and on, and we used to, a lot of the girls, I had to lose, when you went in there, you had to lose your identity. I couldn't be called Philomena Lee anymore. I was called Marcella. So I was only ever known as Marcella. I'd nearly forgotten I was called Philomena Lee after 3.5 years. But each girl, and people say to me now, I meet people that, women that were in the home at the time, would you have known my mother? I wouldn't have known the mother because I only knew her by her home name. I would only know her by her home name. I wouldn't even know who she was or anything. So if they had said like a name like Mary Smith or Margaret Smith or something, I would have known, but we were only just given home names and I just wouldn't know anybody. This was the tragic part of it all, really. Anyway, I never heard from any of my family for the 3.5 years I was there. I hadn't told my 2 sisters. Both my sisters were in Dublin by this stage, and I hadn't told them because the shame was over. We were made to feel so ashamed about it all, you know. And of course I was ashamed for what I'd done and, you know, didn't realise what it was all about. So I thought, I can't tell anybody. My other 2 brothers didn't know. There was only one brother that knew. And they kind of didn't know. And in the beginning, they found out in the end. But my 2 sisters never knew. And so I couldn't contact anybody. And the only way you could leave the home, we used to beg for the nuns to get us jobs so as we could take our baby with us, but we couldn't, and our little boys were there, and a little girl. They said, no, you've got to stay here until your baby is adopted. So I had to stay there for 3.5 years. So that life went on, we just went on, it was church and all the time. So you've got to repent for your sins, you've got to repent for your sin, having a baby out of wedlock, which was a very big mortal sin in those days, you know. Anyway, life went on. And then I never sort of, we just accepted life as it was, really. It was very hard, many times it was very hard, but we just got on with it. We had to, so there's nothing else we could do. Anyway, about, after what happened
in the June.
In
the June,
yes.
document.
Oh yes, in the June of 1955, this was, you know, I was called up to a room, there was a gentleman there and the nun, and you probably know her name, Sister Hildegard. She was there. She used to deal with all the adoptions apparently, but I didn't know this till years later. But anyway, she was there and she said, and Reverend Mother Barbara, I think was her name, yes, was her name, and said, you signed this document. Of course I didn't know what I was signing, no more than the man in the moon. And of course, if any of you have read the book or seen the document that I signed, that's the document I signed. And they said, sign this document because your boy is going to be adopted. This was 3.5 years later. So I signed it because I thought, I never knew, they didn't say what was happening at the time. But then afterwards they said, he's going to be adopted to America. And I thought, oh my God. But then I had to wait till June, and in June the 27th it was, in 55. And he left in June, he left in December 1955. 1 week, they took him away 1 week before Christmas. And he, but I had to wait every day. I used to think, will he be going today? Will he be going today? They never discussed anything. They never discussed, the parents never discussed anything with us at all. We just didn't know. You just had to accept it, and that was it. Otherwise, he would have had to stay there. And sometimes, apparently, I discovered afterwards that if they were never adopted, they had to go to industrial schools in Ireland. So what happened then was that every day, one day in December, I think it was the 15th of December, was it? Yeah. There was one lovely nun there. From the very beginning, she always got me little photographs when she could. She said when the Reverend Mother wasn't looking, she'd get the camera, and there were some nice nuns there, you know, they weren't all bad. And she got me from the time he was 12 months until he left. And I've got a lovely little album.
Yeah, there's a photo up there.
Oh yeah. And without her, I would never ever have had any, because we weren't allowed to be taken with our babies. You weren't allowed at all. I know they wouldn't take any photo, but I mean it was unheard of. But anyway,
you wrote to your father.
Yeah, I wrote to my father then, and before he was, and I said he's going to be adopted. So he came in one Sunday evening to see me from Libberton with my brother. My brother's called, it was Toss, we used to call him Toss, he was Thomas, John Toss Lee. And they both came in. So anyway, I said he was going to be adopted. My father went off with the nun, Sister Hildegard, somewhere or other. And Toss stayed with me, my brother, you know. He hadn't seen him for 3.5 years. And when he saw Anthony, my goodness, he said, and the day he died, he regretted. He said, all I want to do is to run down that drive and take him with me. Because he was a lovely, bouncing, tall, lovely little lad he was. He was really good. Well, I say he was gorgeous and he was lovely. You know, he was my boy. And, but I said to him afterwards, look, it's no good you running down that drive. To us, it looked like a 5-mile, 10-mile drive, because it was away from the home was going into Roscrea, the drive. So anyway, he didn't do it, but he was bouncing him on his knee, and he was loving him and everything else. So then he went off, and my father
gave him money for the airplane.
Oh yes, and I'd never had any money the whole time I was there. Only this nice kind, she was called Sister Nunziata. She was nice. Every now and again she'd bring me some chocolates or sweets to give him, you know, so I could give him a biscuit or a sweet or something like that. But I had no money. There was a little shop there you could buy things, and I had never had any money at all. There was no way I could. We never got paid for the laundry work or anything. We got no money. We had to do that to compensate the nuns for taking us in. So anyway, my brother came in and he gave me £3. I couldn't believe it. And I mean, £3 to him in those days. He was just starting out in his life as well, you know. He was only 18 months older than me. And he gave me £3. Well, I got the airplane. You've seen the photograph of him with the airplane and a little bus. I bought him in the. And he clung to that so he couldn't. I just couldn't believe it. I was able to buy it in the little shop. The only £3 I ever had. So anyway, as I say, the next thing was I heard the same nun again, Sister Nunziata. The day he was due to leave, he left on the December, just a week before Christmas, and I didn't know he was going that day. What happened? His adoption. Sorry about this. The lady that adopts him, they came from Missouri, and her husband. She was Irish descent and he was German descent, and they came from Missouri. But she had brother a bishop in Missouri, and she only wanted a little girl because she had 3 boys of her own, and the youngest one was 10 at the time. But she only wanted a little girl, and she wasn't, you know, she didn't want a boy. She didn't want a boy whatsoever. But anyway, she came to the home and she picked out little Mary that became his sister. But every time she went there, Anthony was there looking after her and following her around and keeping an eye on her, you know. And so the last time she went, he just went up and gave her a kiss. He didn't know what was happening. He gave the mother a kiss. Well, she melted. I think she must have melted, really. I mean, I never met them. I didn't know them at all. So she rang. She said, I can't leave him. I just can't leave him. I've got to take him, she said. And she had Mary. She adopted and she had Mary. So she had to bring her husband from Ireland to Missouri in them days. That was in 1955. So he said, oh, bring him along, just bring him along. You can bring in half a dozen more if you like, she said. But this is what he's, well, anyway, I'll tell you the rest of the story later. So that's what happened. And so he went, she took him and she took Mary. But of course, I never knew when he was going to go. And the day that they came to, their mother wasn't there, but they were sent out on a plane. Aer Lingus at the time, I think. They were sent out with somebody had to take a young man to take charge of them and take them.
When you saw him going in the car.
Eh?
When you saw him
Oh
going in the
yeah.
car.
Anyway, the next thing was this announced none again, this annunciator. She said, come quick, she said. So I ran up the stairs, I didn't know what she was saying. She said, they're taking Anthony away. I thought, oh my God, you know, I couldn't believe it. So I ran up the stairs, and it's true, like what you see there.
That's obviously a scene from the movie. We don't have the real picture of what happened.
Now, real Anthony, that's sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, up the stairs I went, and there he was getting into a car and going off, and that's the last I ever saw of him. And I never gave him a final hug or a kiss. Or sorry about this, but anyway. So off he went. So, well, I was distraught, you can imagine. A 3.5-year-old little boy going, and sorry. Anyway, he went, and of course afterwards he was gone. That was it. I couldn't do anything about it. They never told me he was going that day or anything. Nobody told you anything. They were doing what they thought was best for us. I suppose. I don't know. I just don't know. I often thought about it afterwards. But anyway. Sorry.
That's right. Those early scenes, if you've seen the movie or read the book, they are very much based on Mum's account of what happened, and you know the scene seeing his face disappear in the car. I think that's a very emotional scene for everybody anyway. And I think you can tell that that's genuinely what happened. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. I do apologise. Anyway, off he went, and of course I didn't know where he was. All I knew, he was adopted to America, and that was it. That's all they ever told me. So of course, afterwards I was on my own, Marcella on her own, going crazy. I was just going crazy, crying. I think I was causing disturbance. I wanted him back, you know. And the nuns were saying, stop your nonsense, you should be grateful that he was adopted. You should be very grateful and all this. So, I didn't know what to do, but I suppose I carried on and cried so much. This was on the 15th of December, 55. And by the 6th of January, they found me a job over in Liverpool in a boys' school, would you believe? It was in a boys', they were 6 to 16, you know. And I worked there for 2 years. I did reception work, I did a bit of help in the kitchen, helped the nursing sister with the boys, you know. And that was the beginning of my life. And it was the beginning of, the first time in my whole life I had a room of my own, you know. They had a radio. It was a little small room, but it was mine. I had a radio, and I'm very interested in radio. And so I worked there for 2 years, and I began to see life. I got paid then. I got £2 or £3 a week, and I was able to go downtown and do some shopping and, you know, normal things that girls do in those days. And then I thought, no, I can't do this. I've got to find myself a career, you know. And I must have nursing. I think my grandmother was a nurse in the local town of Newcastle West. But anyway, I had the nursing spirit in me, and I wanted to go and do nursing. And I left the home after 2 years. And the home, by the way, was run by the same order of nuns that were in Roscrea, the Sisters of Sacred Heart of Jesus and Mary, they were called. Anyway, they were nice, they were quite kind. But I mean, as I say, I was a working lady by this stage then. Working girl, I should say. And so I head off down to, I got the nursing mirror, and I looked in there, and I came across this. It stood out the whole time, a hospital. It was called Hill End Hospital, and it was in St Albans, the most beautiful Hertfordshire town in England. And there I've lived ever since, for the last 56 years. I took up psychiatric nursing straight away, and I began to get some idea of, still very, very, very distraught. My religion went by the board. I didn't go to confessional communion anymore when I left the convent in Roscrea. I was so how could this happen to me? How could it happen to me? But then as I have said from time to time, there were the times and there was nothing else I could do, there was nowhere I could go. But at least being adopted to America, I look back now over the years and think, well, he went to a very good home, had a very good education, and he didn't have to go to an industrial school. You know, I have to be thankful for that now. But I have only heard all this years later, the industrial schools and what happened. Anyway, I took up the nursing, and by this stage now, I think I was about 23. So I made my career, and I was still very bitter and very hurt within me, because there was nobody I could tell, I never told the story to anybody. As a matter of fact, I suppose you all know, I kept it a secret for 50 years. I never even told my lovely daughter, my son, my other son, Kevin. Never told him at all. I just kept it secret because we were so grounded that we were such sinners. We were such sinners. Said Mary Magdalene, our feast day was on the 22nd of July, so we used to get that one day off a year, because we were Magdalene girls, really. But we were not like the Magdalene girls that suffered in Dublin, but we were a mother and baby home. That was a different order all day in Magdalene. But anyway, we were still called, St. Mary Magdalene was our patron saint, so we had to pray to her, because she was supposed to be a sinner. Anyway, life went on, and I took up nursing, and I became very interested in the psychiatric nursing. I did part of general. The first half of my nursing career was general, because at that time Bart's Hospital had moved out from London. They had moved out into St. Albans, and the wounded soldiers after the war were nursed in Hill End, where I was. And then Bart stayed at Hill End. All the nurses used to come out from Bart's. And they stayed at Hill End for 20 years because they were still building on to the hospital in London. So we were general and psychiatric. You know, we had to, our first 18 months was all general. So we had to go to theatres and do all what the Bart's nurses did. And then I branched off into psychiatry. And I took up psychiatry after that. And then for 30 odd years I worked in psychiatry. And over the years, you know, such tragedy and such heartache I've seen in psychiatric nursing, you know, what patients went through, what families went through. And it was all caused, mostly I often think, was caused through anger and hurt, you know, which was me being angry about Anthony. So I gradually over the years let it fade away. I never forgot him, but the anger faded away. And I was more interested in my patients, and you know, I did very well in psychiatry, and I stayed there for 30 years. And then I met Jane's dad. He was a male nurse, and we got married. So life went on, and I had Kevin first, my son Kevin, who is now 55, and my daughter. Then I had Jane, and so life went on. We worked hard because we didn't have a lot of money. We were poor, but we worked hard, and I did nursing all my life. And as I say, life went on, and then they grew up, and I still kept the secret. And you know, I didn't tell anybody whatsoever. The only one that knew was my brother. Mind you, I did tell Jane's dad before I married him. I said, well, I'll tell him, because if he doesn't want to marry me, I said I had a baby. Little baby boy, and I said, but he's already gone, he's adopted in America. And he said, what's past is past. And from that day until the day I told Jane the story, 50 odd years later, he never mentioned it. So I often think, I wish he had done, but maybe I would have talked about it more, but then it wasn't meant to be. That's how I look at it. So he never mentioned it, so we got married, and as I say, life went on. And he was a male, then he left male, and then I stayed at the male nursing. Then when they were getting older, I went on night duty so that I could be home all day with them, because there was no such thing as babysitters in those days. So I went on night duty, and then I did that for 12 years, and then by this time they were growing up and they went to secondary school and what have you. And then I went back on day duty, and because I was only half qualified when I became a state enrolled nurse. And then I went back to do it. I thought I've got to do some more training and go up the ladder, you know, which I did. Became a sister and a nursing officer and what have you. But as I say, that was after they were able to go to the big school. And one week of mornings and 1 week of afternoons, so I sat them down and talked to them and said, look, one morning, but their dad was there, you know, he used to be home in the evening, but the mornings, that's how we did morning or afternoon shift. So life went on, and...
Say about when you decided to tell me.
All right. Then I went home one year. I used to go home quite a bit to Newcastle West to my brother. And my dad was there then. I'd made up with my dad at the stage. And then what happened was that I went... Well, my brother was always, every time I went out, he said, I wonder where he is. I wonder what's happened to Anthony. My brother used to call him Tony. I wonder what's happened to him. And I used to say, God, he could be on death row, he could be a drug addict, he could be in Vietnam, all the bad things I kept thinking, you know, never knew what had happened to him whatsoever. And he said, will you for goodness sake go back home and tell your daughter and tell your son? You've got to. He said, I was coming into my 70s then. You all heard my age earlier on. 81, oh my God. Anyway, I was going into my 70s and I thought, God, I'm getting old. I have got to find him. I've got to find him. You know, before anything happens to me, before I pass over up there. I hope up there. And anyway, I came back and he said, now please go back and tell her. This was in 2002. Now it's a long time. Was it 2003? Sorry. So back I went, and I didn't know how I was going to drum up the courage. I couldn't tell them. Even when Jane had her children, I thought, I'll tell her now. I just couldn't bring it out of me, because I'd kept it a secret so long. So anyway, I got you. Can you tell the story from here on, where I told this?
Well, Mum had just come home from a visit to Ireland, and she came round to I'd moved house recently, and I'd renovated the cottage, and she'd come in and was feigning interest in decor and light switches, which is not my mum at all. And literally, we just sat there, and we did actually open a bottle of wine. It wasn't, both the movie and the book have dramatic license, so the reality of how I found out, and what happened, you know, along the way, they're kind of different from probably what you've seen or heard. But she did tell me over a bottle of wine, it wasn't a drunken discussion, I think, which may be in the book or something. And she just came out and said she had a baby in the 1950s in Ireland. And immediately I knew who the little boy was in those photographs, because I'd always seen the little photos of him, and I always thought he looked like he was in an odd place. He looked like he was in a hospital or something, you know, and there wasn't, obviously not in a family setting or situation. And I wasn't shocked at all. I mean, I wasn't horrified. Mum had not told us because she thought that my brother and I would reject her, because that's what she'd been led to believe.
Should have known better.
Yeah, but that's what you thought was important, which is why she'd taken so long to tell us. And my immediate reaction was I was delighted to think that I had another brother out there. You know, I was really, really happy about that. And I said, do you want me to try and find him? Her initial reaction for about 10 seconds was no. And then she said, could you? I think the possibility that I could try and find him, it not really entered your head. Mum, over the years, as I now know, had written to the nuns at Sean Ross Abbey every address moved. She last went there in the 70s. It wasn't as recent as it shows in the film. But they always had her address and her name and her phone number. And obviously we now know that Anthony went looking, but they didn't pass that on. But I didn't realise, being brought up in the United Kingdom, the issues with getting information here in Ireland. I was actually really shocked, because the first thing I did was Google adopted from Ireland or in Ireland, and that's the first thing I came across was Adoption Rights Alliance, and I was shocked. It took me a while. It took a while for it to sink in that you had to try and go through this whole process of trying to get information. In my naivety, I assumed the world was the same over that at 18 you had an automatic right to find your identity. So we went from there, and it took about 2 years. Again, this is where it differs in reality. It wasn't Martin that discovered that Anthony had died. Mum and I did that ourselves. But I followed the guide that is on Adoption Rights Alliance about writing to all the different authorities and departments here in Ireland. And in the movie, Steve Coogan says that he was sent full circle. That's true in reality. The last department I wrote to referred me back to the first department, and nobody would give me any information. So the last people to write to were the nuns that hold the records here in Cork. And I'd not had very good a reputation. The reputation wasn't great, so I had left that till the very last to write to this particular nun, which we did in the end. And she wrote us a letter back saying that she had some information to share. And so the night Mum told me, and the night we found out what happened to Anthony, they're very, very emotional nights.
Oh.
You kind of get the two slightly confused, but they both happened in my cottage. But this letter came back and it said we have some information to share. And we both had different reactions. Your reaction was you were delighted. You thought,
I was delighted. Oh my God, I found him. Oh, I found him at last. We found him. And of course, we had to ring her.
We did ring her.
We had to ring her in Cork. And
my reaction was slightly different because I, hadn't heard good reports from this nun about giving out information and things. So I thought if they've got information to share, is it great or is it not?
Yeah.
But literally, she told us, or told Mum over the telephone.
She said, yes, we have got some information. Yeah, will you get in touch? So we got in touch with her. And she said, I kept saying, oh God, we found him, I can't believe we found him, But I'm very sorry to tell you he's dead, she said, just like that. God, wasn't it all?
Yeah.
I'm very sorry to tell you he's dead. And I thought, oh, he was only 43 at that time, his age was 43.
So that was quite hard. She was clearly reading something out because I was trying to make notes, and then she said that there was a plaque to him. She didn't tell us he was buried there. She said there was a plaque to him at Shormoss Abbey.
In Roscrea.
And on the Adoption Rights Alliance site, one of the members had previously visited there, and I had put the photographs. I think there's a picture there of Anthony's headstone, which I'd seen before on the site, but I hadn't realised that it was him, because of course it's Michael Hess, and I hadn't clicked on the date of birth hadn't registered in my head, but it was from that headstone. When she told us that the plaque was there, she did tell us his name was Michael Hess, so I recognised it was him. And so obviously I googled Michael Hess, and because it says Washington on there, that's how we managed to find out. We found his obituary and then obviously found out who he had become.
Yeah.
And Martin, the journalist, actually got involved some months later because I'd been trying to find the American side. Obviously we now know that Anthony was gay, but we were trying to find maybe his husband, wife, partner, and Mary Kate, we were trying to find her as well, or any family he may have had. And I'd even written to the Republican Party but hadn't got any response. And a mutual friend of mine knew Martin, and she did see him at a party and told him sorry. Because he'd been a political correspondent in Washington, that's what piqued his interest in the story in the first place. And of course he had all the connections in Washington, and within a week he'd found Anthony's partner, and he'd found Mary Kate for us, hadn't he?
He did, yes, yeah.
And then obviously he decided he was going to write the book, and we've met Anthony's partner. That was very special, wasn't it?
Yeah, very, very special indeed. He came over to Martin's house in London, and we went down to see him that evening. He only had about an hour because he was flying back to Hong Kong, wasn't he? He was going through London. And we met him, and he gave us all the information. That's why we found out all the information about Anthony. Up till then, we didn't know a thing, did we? Not one thing. No, he gave me I've got his ring there. It was a Celtic ring. He loved Ireland, apparently. He loved Ireland. He was a very gifted young man, very gifted. All sorts of things he used to do, didn't he? And as I say, he ended up being chief attorney. He was a chief attorney in the White House to the Bushes and the Reagans, and it turned out that he. I had said to this nun when she said, "I have found information." Oh, what did he die of? Was it an accident or something? It could have been an accident or disease. She didn't tell me what it was, but she knew because Anthony was gay, and he'd been with his partner for 14 years. But according to the book, sexuality was quite split. It wasn't like that at all. He wasn't really like that. But anyway, that's another story. And so Andy, partner, told us all about him. And he went over 3 times to Ireland looking for me. And they said, no, we don't know where she is. And I used to send my new address every time I moved house, if they got it. I never got any answers back for that in those days, but I thought, well, they'll keep the addresses and what have you. And if he ever does come looking for me, I always come somehow with the feeling that maybe he would. He went 3 times looking for me, and each time he went around the graveyards, he went down to Cork, he went everywhere, didn't he? And to think that we've got a plot at home in Newcastle West, an hour and a half away. He was only an hour and a half away from my brother, who was desperate to find him, you know. But he just said nothing. Sorry about this again, but they told him actually, the nuns actually told Anthony that I had abandoned him at 2 weeks old. I went off and left him at 2 weeks, and I looked after him for 3.5 years, you know. This was the sad part of it. He died thinking I had abandoned him, you know. This is the sad part of it too, but I've accepted, you know, that sort of thing. And but it was his partner told us all this, gave us all this information. We got nothing at all from the nuns. So if it hadn't been for the partner, I would have never ever known. And it was only the last phone call that you made to that nun. She said, we have information. There's a plaque of his. And I thought the plaque was that he actually, when he was there looking for me, he bought a lovely, beautiful picture of the Last Supper. And the nuns had it in the home for 9 years. It was hanging in their dining room. They had left for them. And also, when the partner went with him, when he went looking for me, and he said there's an old, in the grounds of Shanross Abbey, there's an old monastery, an old abbey, and he said, if anything ever happens to me, will you get my ashes back, so that one day my mum will find me, you know, so here we go again. So a year after he died, Stephen brought his ashes back. And they had a whole, we've since got a photograph of all that happened. At the graveside, the priest came down from Dublin, Father Leonard, I think it was, and his partner was there, and Mary that was over there, little girl Mary was there, they were all there, and all the staff that had worked it. And I'm only an hour away, and nobody told me anything about it, that his ashes were buried in Rossgrave. And I never found out. For 9 years his grave was there, and I didn't know anything about it. But at least I got to know it now, and I can visit him. But,
you know, we have since been told by his partner as well that Anthony paid a lot of money to be buried there. I'm not sure of the exact figure, but I'm pretty sure that Martin Sixsmith, in the back of my mind, it's something like £20,000. So his partner was very angry with the convent as well when he knew that we'd gone looking. And we did only find the partner and the American side through the journalist.
Yeah.
Because even we'd gone back to Rossgrave to visit Anthony's grave the first time before we'd met Martin, and we did visit the grave. And the nun that was in charge there, I think there's a scene in the movie where she said, we can't take away your pain, but we can hold your hand through it. That actually happened, that is real.
Yeah,
and she didn't give us any information. We were looking for Mary at that time, or trying to find her, you know, or anything, any family, any of the Hesses or anything. And she gave us no information at all. We went back the subsequent year, and we'd met Martin at this stage, and I told her that, and I told her been in touch with the family. And she did go to the cupboard and give me a pile of papers, which she could have given me the previous year. It was there, everything was there, the names, the addresses of everybody. And I don't know why she didn't give it to us previously. It was just their policy not to, this thing about protecting a mother's privacy, but I think you saw in the document that Mum signed there, she never asked for that. It was the opposite, the absolute opposite, and that she wouldn't go seeking him. So she'd always believed that she wasn't allowed to go looking for him.
I did, yeah.
You know, because of that document, which was also signed without, there was no legal advice.
No.
There was nothing. Was there? Nothing at all.
Didn't know the first thing about it. I mean, I didn't even know where he'd gone in America or anything all my life. I knew he'd gone to America. He's gone to a good Catholic family, and that's it. That was the story. He's in America and he's adopted. Yeah, that was the story. And that's where I lived with all my life. And as I said, I was never to contact him according to the document. I suppose he could contact me, but I was never to contact him, so I had to sign that. And I don't even remember reading it, requirements, I don't remember. I was only, you know, I just signed him away. I said, there's no other way I'm going to. He's going to a very good Catholic home, and that was all I was told. Which we subsequently found out that he did. And he did have a good, happy life. It's not all doom and gloom. And although we've had the worst possible outcome by Anthony having died by the time we found him, at least it's given you, you know what happened to him. It's given you closure, hasn't it? In that sense, you feel Oh, I do, yes.
I felt very guilty about having gone to look for him and the fact that he died because of the hurt that caused as well. But now, with time on from it, I definitely think it was the not knowing was so much worse.
It was. And I always said, at least I found him and I put him to rest. And have a chat with him every now and again up there. You know, so I've never forgotten the whole of my life. I've never forgotten it. Prayed that maybe one day I will find him. And of course, you know, as I said, the power of prayer, sometimes it does happen. And I did find him, and I'm able to put him to rest. And I'm able to, at least with his grave being in Ireland, at least I can come over, you know. And I'm in touch with the florists down there, and they go and they make sure everything is okay.
Well, but we never for a million years imagined that you know, what would happen with Anthony's story, because Mum was just telling Martin the book got written, and it just so happened that Steve Coogan picked up on there's a photograph of Mum and Martin Sixsmith that when the book was written, this photograph was in the Guardian, and he read the article and was in tears by the end of it, but he decided to, Martin, my mum, can you see it? Because she's laughing in the photo, because quite often there are sad stories, people look all doom and gloom, because she's laughing in the photo, he recognised that, that there was a story here, that, you know, there was a genuine, real story here. And obviously when Steve Coogan, we know him as a comedian, so when he contacted about making a movie, we kind of thought, what, really?
Steve Coogan, oh God.
But I don't think, we're actually pleased with the results, even though the story is very different. Mum didn't actually go to America with Martin. That journey.
We went afterwards.
Yeah, we went afterwards. Yeah.
He blazed the trail for us.
And obviously, I told you how
we went to the.
I told you how we found out how Anthony died. Is very different from the movie, but we were really surprised by the response it got, and I know that Steve Coogan and Jeff Pope, who wrote it, or everyone involved in the movie, I don't think they quite understood the issues here in Ireland about adoption. They do now. They know that it has raised the awareness for it, and you know, we've done all sorts of things in the last year that we would never have imagined a year ago, like being here talking, for example, all sorts of things. And you know, people ask you the question, you were never sure that you wanted your story told at all.
No, I wasn't, no.
I'm told it's an Irish thing, you don't wash your dirty linen in public, you know. It's like,
that's right, yeah.
But of course the story
and
is out
my
there.
family as well, I was trying to shield my family, you know, but of course, I know I've got the most wonderful family. My brother did die 2 years ago, that lovely brother of mine, he died too. He became quite, well, he was quite well known in Newcastle West. He owned the only cinema in Newcastle West at the time, and he was very well known, you know. And,
oh, you got to go to the Oscars. I just saw the picture of that.
You carry on. You tell about the Oscars. Yeah, and then at the Cannes Film Festival, Harvey Weinstein had 7 minutes round of the film. He saw the film and he bought it. He bought it for the American public, and so then after that he went, I suppose, he took it on. He took it and got it on. But Judi Dench at the time, last Christmas, she couldn't do the promotion because she had a knee operation. Plus then after that she was doing another film out in India, was it? So she couldn't go to the to promote the film. So we got hauled out, and I had to bring Jane along with me because
we actually went for 5 days originally, but ended up being away for about 3 months, and then here, there, and everywhere.
Here, there, everywhere, every place in New York and Los Angeles. And
but as a result of the film, obviously the Philomena project, which is really the front face for adoption rights, that kind of brought it into the public domain, that everybody, and so many people, we did lots of question and answer things in theatres after people had seen the movie. So many people obviously very touched by adoption as well, and very many people touched from here, from Ireland. We met several of the banished babies, if that's what you call. We met several of them when we were over in America, and everybody so far. There's been very little negativity. There's been the Catholic League in America that said the film was anti-Catholic, but We did go to the Vatican and we watched the film there, and they didn't feel it was anti-Catholic, which was quite an endorsement as far as I'm concerned with the movie. But other than that, everybody's been very, very positive, and very thankful to my mum for actually being brave enough to tell her story. And I don't know if there's much more to say. I think Anthony would be very proud of her, being the political preacher that he was. He obviously wanted his story, and I think he's helped you to, and hopefully bring all this into the open and help other people of Mum's age as well, because that's a particular issue we feel.
Yeah. I used to feel, and I was on the Late Show, and I said, just for women my age, because they're all the same as I was, too frightened to tell the story, and for them to come out and maybe help their siblings, help their babies, their sons or their daughters, or whoever they were. I think a lot of them have come out, actually.
Yeah, we met one journalist in Washington that was adopted here from Ireland, and she has met her mother and made contact with her mother, but she has to meet her in secret. So she's had to take on her mother's shame, her sin, and that's one thing that I think needs to be lifted completely from the mothers, really. I think I'm a sibling. I would have been delighted to have met my brother, and I think most siblings I know are very happy to meet their siblings as well. I just think it's this shame that really, that's something that we hope will change,
I hope we have anyway, sort of. At the time I was so frightened when I realised she was getting so, everybody was said, but when we went to America, I was so terrified, really. What have I done? What have I done? But I think maybe I have opened some doors, I hope, quite a few doors, I hope, and I was absolutely terrified in the beginning, because I usually lead a very nice, quiet, sedentary life in St. Albans, a lovely family and children, grandchildren and what have you, so it was all such a shock to me, really, my sister, but I've got used to it now a little bit. I was absolutely frightened, I was terrified coming here today, but anyway, you've all been so nice.